I've been in this studio here for 2 years. I've been in the building for, since 1998. This is a portion of a large encaustic construction. Can't stand it up because the ceiling is too low. It's a tornado. Let me give you an idea of what my working situation looks like. I use that wall to put finished pieces or pieces in progress on. And then that yellow wall, I have larger ones. This is some of the test pieces that I have here that I've laid out just to look at. Here is the table that I paint on one side, and then in the back I have another table. I have to be careful with the electrical situation in this studio because I don't want to blow the fuses. So when I want to burn something in with my heat gun down there, I have to unplug the hot plates because they combined with the heat gun will take a lot of energy. I keep one pot with medium. That is the wax with the Damar varnish in it. And then I use the aluminum loaf pans to create different colors, or the pot. And I get those pots at IKEA. You can get maybe 5 or 6 of them for 10 bucks. It looks kind of jumbled, but I know where everything is. The colors that I'm not using, I take off the hot plate and put them on the floor. Floor is cement, so they cool off right away. And that's interesting. You see how this yellow is surrounding that brush, and there's like shards. That's perfectly good color. I take that when I want to use that yellow, and I'll break it like the Bonomo's Turkish taffy. And here's another one like that, this coral color. Because when it's dry, it pops right out of the pan, so you don't need any PAM or anything to loosen it up. Here's my other hot plate, or my second hot plate. I have 3 that I have going all together. And that's some of the paint that I use. But I keep it on just enough heat so that it will stay melted. And I can paint all day. Oh, and this is important. The little pieces that I have left over from different colors, I put them in a separate loaf pan to make a nice gray. I try to keep work up all around me, whether it's finished or in progress or just starting. Because what I do is I work on some and then I put them down and work on others. Now this is interesting. This is a very old piece, and it has elements of the wax, found objects, and then this piece of this clay sculpture. I was doing a workshop at Pewabic Pottery, and I incorporated the clay in with the wood and the encaustic. And that's from 1987. I still have pots of paint from then, that is still good. All I have to do is heat it up. Right now, though, I've been concentrating on brighter colors. But I like to have the older works around, like I mentioned. Here's another one. This is when I was experimenting, while doing more assemblage oriented work. I have pieces of wood embedded on the surface, and they're screwed from behind because this is all plywood. And in this area here is an actual box similar to a Joseph Cornell that has objects inside of it. This is a piece called The Poet's Place, and it was also done in 1987 in honor of my dad. There's his picture. That's from his obituary. And because he always recited and read poetry, I included Edgar Allan Poe. But these are the kinds of things that you discover when you get up close. Now, what's interesting about this piece was snow white when I started it. And you can tell that there is a kind of yellowish tinge. That's because I used yellow beeswax. Yellow beeswax will turn these colors yellow again. So I learned to not use yellow beeswax for pieces where the color was important. Although if it's not, if you're using it just as a substance, then it's all right. Here's another piece here that I don't think is particularly successful, which is fairly new, and it's right next to the ones that are older. And here's one where I embedded bottle caps into the surface to get that kind of texture. And shadow boxes that I attached on permanently, and that's a book. So there was a point in time where I was really incorporating three-dimensional objects into my assemblage, and I've been doing them since a long time. But right now I'm more involved with full color, working smaller, and this may be a transitional period, I'm not sure, but then in every artist's life it's about transition. Here's another palette. What I'm going to do is set up my studio, reconfigure it so that all of my hot plates are in one area. And this is that wall from a distance that I was showing you. And these are all pieces that have been done within the last 2 months, this summer. And I like the idea that I can respond while I'm working, so I keep them in eye's view of my painting area. Here are the brushes that I get from eBay. I've got to order some more. I can get a box of 1-inch brushes, maybe 25 of them, for varying prices, generally around $6. It also depends on the shipping and handling costs from whatever source you're buying them from. Here's an example of some stencil texture, and this was a test piece at first, and I kind of like it the way it turned out. There's another piece here, and this is also from '85. I remember this because I showed it at the Fagenson Preston Gallery in the Fisher Building, And that has photographs embedded in the surface of the niches of that shadow box. My older works tend to have darker colors. My newer ones brighter colors. And that's purely because of the choices I made at any particular time about the palette I was using. And at one point I was doing the surfaces with pigment. Now I only use oil paint. And that is because I really don't want to deal with the volatility of the dry pigment. I developed asthma, not from the materials, but from other tangential issues going on in my health. And so I use them very sparingly, if at all. The piece that I have at the DIA, and here's a new medium that I just made, in a very large pot. The piece that I have at the DIA was created using the pigments, and I remember at the time that I used them, I wasn't really careful. But that's what one does when one is young. So, this is a brief exposure to my current practice and my studio, which is in Corktown, in downtown Detroit.